Good morning and welcome to the Boardman Performance Centre in Evesham. Hopefully this is going to be an exciting day ahead. No, I am not going in the wind tunnel. The TriathlonDan budget is not quite stretched to a wind tunnel optimisation session yet. However, I'm here with Bottrill Performance Coaching for a day of information. So a few talks about strength and conditioning, about aerodynamics, all different things that this place has to offer. So hopefully going to take you guys along for the ride. So enjoy. This is going to be some learning, so hopefully me and you as well. So the day started off with a nice coffee from the guys at Boardman. Quick look around the shop, keeping my hands in my pockets so I don't buy anything. The big man Matt said yes, fine to take a few clips from today, so here we go, I'll capture what I can.
Welcome everybody, it's really nice to have you here. Thanks for coming here on a wet Saturday morning in November. Wouldn't you rather be here than actually out on the bike?
So we've had the welcoming intros, just drooling over some bikes. Very snazzy. First session is with a lady called Bianca. She's going to talk us through sports physiology, so I'll capture some clips of that and hopefully you can understand it better than I will.
So this is our biomechanics lab. This is where we basically do bike fitting. We don't really call the first bike fitting lab because actually we go a step further and we combine it with a lot of Bianca's in particular, her physiotherapy background, so Bianca's a chartered physiotherapist, and we link it to a lot of the other work that I do around biomechanics outside I do as well. So we don't just do simple bike fitting, we take it to the next level. So what it enables us to do is really very much understand people's function, any issues they have or dysfunction, and how we can then get them in a position on a bike that will overcome some of those things and have the optimal performance. Because in here, that's exactly what we're trying to do. From a functional point of view, make sure you're in a position where we can optimise performance, which means maximising the power output, but also maximising comfort as well at the same time. We can find out actually within this functional window where we know you can operate without losing much power, then we can optimise the aerodynamics around that. If we don't have that first piece, it's very difficult in a wind tunnel to find a position which is actually going to lead to an overall optimal performance, because we might get you in a position in the wind tunnel which might be very aerodynamic, but actually you're losing power. And we understand a lot about positioning on the bike where we can get you in an aerodynamic position and get to a point where you're in a position where you can optimise your power. We might need to look at some pedaling effectiveness and improving pedaling efficiency, but very much in that position, so then we can build on that aerodynamics.
So if we wanted to look at him from the side, we could do so. We could look at isolated joints, we could look at the knee, we could look at the hip. If we want to, we can see how that whole chain is working together. We can look from the back, and something that's really important is knee tracking, so you know how efficient are your knees in terms of their linear motion, because that can have direct correlations with power and pedaling effectiveness. In addition to this, we don't want to just use motion capture. Motion capture tells you one part of the picture. It tells you how that joint is working, but it doesn't really fill in the gaps in between. So we've then got stuff like the divinised pressure mapping, which some of you may have heard. So this is pretty helpful. This was Matt actually. So when we're looking at the pressure mapping, you'll get a top-down view. The actual sensor goes on the saddle. So if we need to put that on the bike and have a little look and see what happens to not only pressure, is there too much pressure on the nose of the saddle? Is there too much pressure through the middle of the saddle? But also what's happening with your saddle stability. So the ideal solution is really looking for something like going from this, where there's perhaps a little bit more pressure and more ambulation, to trying to minimise those pressures and minimise the motion, so that really your force can be directed into the place where it needs to be the most, which is your pedal. So yeah, pretty nifty tool.
As Bianca said, we do a lot of our testing under load, and we have a couple of things that we do when we look at kind of pedaling technique and pedaling effectiveness. It's something that not many people really think about. You just get on the bike and you pedal, but actually there's a lot of scope in terms of improving effectiveness. And what I mean by this is when we pedal, just pointing towards you, when we pedal on the crank, when we push force through, what we're trying to do is create a torque, a turning force on the crank. Okay, very simply. And I think you'll agree, when we pedal in this position and we push down on the crank at this in this orientation, if we're pushing the force directly down through the pedal, through here, then all of that force is going to create a turning force, isn't it? Okay, a torque. And that force is moderated by the pedal. So if we have the pedal in this position, so a heel down position, and we push through the pedal to the floor of the foot, if you like, in that direction, actually there's a portion of that force that doesn't go to turn it. Similar down here, if we just push directly down through the pedal, actually that's just pushing the force to try and elongate or stretch the crank arm, and ends up deforming the bottom bracket. It's not actually causing any turning force. So what you can do when we're paddling is we can determine where in the pedal stroke we apply force. So we apply force at the top, and if so, what direction, and how that changes through the whole crank cycle, and how much force we apply, and the proportion of that goes into actually creating a turning crank torque force, which in turn turns the chain rings, and then the chain and the wheel, the rest of it. That's called our pedaling efficiency, our index of force effectiveness. And this is data from, so we get some of that data, an overview of it from the Watt bike. I think, who's used a Watt bike?
Yeah, it gives you a score, doesn't it? I don't really know what it means.
Yeah, that's right. Pedaling effectiveness score. Yeah. It gives an indication of how much force you're putting around the whole pedal stroke and the dead spot. So it's a really good user-friendly kind of feedback guide.
You get the little picture of the little.
That's right. Yeah, you get that little kind of peanut circle kind of thing, and that's a really good guide, kind of training feedback tool to improve it.
Okay, so we look at things like blood pressure, body composition, some blood chemistry, so risks of anemia, to do with oxygen carrying capacity. Also some general health checks around cholesterol and glucose. And then we finish up with an assessment of the respiratory function, which is basically how big your lungs and how well they work under forced efforts at rest. Okay, that gives us a great insight into what we might see during exercise pieces. Okay. Once we've gone through that, I'm sure you graduate with flying colours and you progress to the exercise pieces. Right? We start very much with sub-maximal efforts like this, and we go through to shorter, sharper pieces to get a really nice profile of an individual's physiology. Okay. So what we've got here is Adam is working at very easy wattage here, so 120. This is pretty much where we would start Adam on a test like this. And we're going to work in 20 watt increments, so 3-minute stages, 20 watts up each time. Okay? And we want to see primarily two things in here from a threshold perspective. So the lactate threshold, which is 3-hour power, lactate turn point, which is 1-hour power. Okay? And the importance here is these are physiologically derived. Okay? So I know there are things out there like FTP testing, which give us a good indication, but whether they do truly tell us kind of hour power is a slightly different thing. Okay. This one here, SpO2, that refers to oxygen saturation. Okay, so the thing on Adam's finger is measuring that for us. Because it's very easy for him at the minute. It's very close to maximal values, 99, 100%. Okay. What we're interested in is as we push someone really quite hard, so kind of towards the end of the VO2 max test or something like that, just how much does that number drop? Okay? If that falls below 88%, that gives us a pretty good indication that that individual might struggle with exercise at altitude. Okay? So the classic example for that is if someone says to me, I'd like to have a shot at the hour record. Okay, should I go up there for the thinner air, or should I do it at sea level? This is a great test to do at sea level to profile that individual and see what should be done there. RER. That stands for respiratory exchange ratio. Okay, so what that is telling us in a nutshell is when this is in the 0.7s, 0.8s, we're using relatively a lot of fat to fund the exercise at the pedal. Okay? When that goes above 1, we're using exclusively carbohydrate. Right? That's really important because we have finite stores of carbohydrate. Okay, if we carb load, for want of a better expression, our muscles, our liver will be fully topped up with something called glycogen, which is our carbohydrate effect. Okay, so if we are using a lot of carbohydrates early on within this intensity spectrum, that's going to be troublesome for an endurance athlete, certainly for an ultra endurance athlete. Okay, so it's an important thing to measure. We would be measuring blood lactate concentration during this test as well, okay, and that's to help us identify these distinct thresholds. But we can also use the gas data to get that. Okay, here at the centre, we use a combination of the two to get good accuracy on those thresholds.
What's the highest VO2 max you've seen?
My previous job, we tested Chris Froome, and he had 83.4.
Oh.
Yeah. So he's an absolute. Yeah.
Is the VO2 max the limiting factor then on people's ability?
That's a great question. So the VO2 max is used like the top trumps out of the range.
Yeah.
Anyone who's done anything like this, oh, what's your VO2 max? I'll let
That's why I asked.
They're like, well, okay, I'll let you go off, you know. And while it is the backbone of an endurance performance, I say it's like, you know, to race at a certain level, so let's say Cat 2 or something, you know, you're probably going to need a VO2 max of about 60 mils per kg per minute. But once you've got that, that's like your ticket to the party. And once you're at the party, these other little things, the minutiae, they are actually going to determine who's going to, you know, where you're going to place. So things like economy, you know, it's like miles per gallon in your car. That's critical for endurance sports, all right? So,
really
anyone who tells you it's all about VO2 max, you know, it's not. It's important, but it's not everything.
So the first part you just saw was the sort of physiology side. The second part was more the performance side, so actually looking into performance numbers. Very interesting. I just had a quick chat with the guy afterwards about my own numbers and targets and ambitions and how much of it's trainable, how much is natural and stuff, and so it's really, really interesting. So yeah, very happy to have made the effort to come here, and now we're going in the wind tunnel. So this is the bit you probably all been waiting for, so let's get in there.
Welcome to the wind tunnel. The first thing you obviously will notice is there's a big fan. But it's behind the rider, not in front. So a lot of people think that fan is going to be that end, pushing the wind at you. Well, we're doing it the other way around. The wind is being pulled at you. So the fan there is, if you're looking at it now, you'll see there's quite a big space behind there. We'll walk downstairs later because we are a box in a much bigger box, which is like an aircraft hangar. And the wind off that fan is actually going that way, of course, and getting recirculated underneath us. So if you look down this way, you will be able to see the collector, the intake and collector of the wind tunnel. You see how it's much wider. So wind tunnel, yes, but actually you could arguably say it's a wind funnel, really. So you can feel the wind is pulling up wind over. If you can see the screen that George is looking at, and we'll see this on the TV in the view room when we're in there in a moment. On the top right there's a drag dial. That's the actual force of that wind pushing you back, George. It's just over 3 newtons. That's 300 grams of drag. Doesn't sound much, does it? It's not much at all. It's half a bag of sugar. Just over half a bag of sugar. But that's at low speed. Watch this. I'm going to just gently press George's shoulder, and you watch the drag up. Okay? I'm not pressing hard, am I? No. So that wind, when we're up at speed, that press back of the wind on the rider is drag. That's what we're trying to reduce. That's what we're measuring. The rig is a turntable, and most importantly, it's a measuring scale. So, like your measuring scales at home, you get on in the bathroom, when it's measuring in that direction, well, our measuring scale is measuring in every direction, and most importantly, that direction, that pushback that you've seen there. The other thing about the rig that's important is why it's a turntable is it allows us to turn the rider into the wind. So we don't turn the wind into the rider, but now we can look at the effect of crosswinds on the rider, and you can see we can go to 30 degrees either side. And why that is important is because you're very, very rarely going to get a zero straight ahead wind on you when you're out on the open road. The time we might get it is on the track, on the straight bits of the track, but most of the time you're going to be spending in the region of 5 to 15 degrees yaw. Sometimes wider when you're on slow windy days, something like the Hawaii Ironman or something like that.
So George, as you've seen, has this bit on his on the screen in front of him, and here we're going to see this blue outline. So we can set this to whatever we've recorded, and so this is his baseline, and then he can see relative to that what to do. So he's that in front of him, so that's really important. So you're looking at helmets, you want to make sure you're doing a fair test, so you keep the same position. You know, if you're a bit higher up or a bit lower, that's going to mask the effect of the helmet. So they can make sure they've got their head in the right position and just change the helmet. Or even if they're doing a different position, they can see what they were previously and see how they can tuck their head down, how much they can get it down. It's a really good reference frame. So you're doing a 1 minute capture. So a bike and person, what we'd call a bluff body, are really quite aerodynamic, and you've got your legs moving as well. So we find a minute is a really good length of time to get a kind of really good representative sample of data. And then what we'll do is we'll get the drag data and lots of other data, and we'll get your coefficient of drag area, which is what Jamie was talk about all those numbers, but those don't mean a lot unless you're really quite read a lot into them. You probably don't know, have a good gauge on it. So we can present it as kind of power saved, time saved, speed increase for the same power, and we plot it on a graph. So instead of just throwing the numbers at you post session, we kind of present it really nicely and clearly, so you can understand quite easily what's faster, what's slower, and what the best position is.
So have a look at the two pictures here. And it's a spot the difference contest, the difference between them. The left is the baseline, the right is the adjustment we made. And you'll see what's
Open hands.
Yeah. So the hands are opened in that right hand picture. Well, let's have a little look at the effect of this. So this is a rider riding at team pursuit world record pace, so it's 63.5 kph. The wind is blowing over them. What I'm going to ask him to do is open up his hands. So he's done just like George has done. The wind is on and he's making the change, and we're seeing straight away live the effect of opening up the thumbs and putting a gap in between the two thumbs. I'm asking him to do that over the Bluetooth earpiece. He's putting a 20mm gap in there, and we're measuring the effect of the drag of that. Now, it is a marginal change at the front end. We're not changing anything else beyond that. But that was in the region of just shy of 2 seconds over a 4K team pursuit improvement. Which, if you think about it, is the difference between making a podium or not, or making the difference between the colour of the medal that you might get on that podium. We don't tend to spend much time looking at kit for a rider unless that's the specific focus. Most of it's about this, the body. But if you look behind into the control room, you can see there's racks of helmets in there. You know how much, there's a lot of them, sorry, I've got a lot of them up here. You know how much a helmet like some of these will cost. We much prefer that if you think about buying a new helmet, come and do a wind tunnel session with us, because we can test all of those in a session. You can go away knowing exactly which is the best helmet for you.
Well, that was awesome. Just had a spot of lunch, just come back to the Boardman Performance Centre, and they're setting up for a cross race tomorrow, so that looks like it'll be good fun. And now we're off to my favourite topic. You guys know I love this, strength and conditioning. So I look forward to this little how-to / little workout. So watch this space.
I've been in the sport, health and fitness industry for 17 years, so since I was 15. I started working in gyms, and then I moved to a school and worked in the PE department, delivering sports coaching to kids. And then I set up my own company, which is Hybrid Performance Strength and Conditioning, and got into working with athletes and general population. So my business runs off 4 pillars of performance, which is mindset, nutrition, movement and recovery. I think they're all really important, and they all have a part to play in your everyday lives, not just when you're being that athlete, not just when you're training, not just when you're competing. Stand up, and they've got tight quads, tight hip flexors and tight hamstrings. Who else has got that? Yeah, I wonder why I put it in there. Okay, so it's got foam roll in the quadriceps. Does anybody know how to use a foam roller?
You just put clothes on it, don't you, and stuff?
Someone asked me about a Smith machine earlier, and I said that was good for drying your clothes. So a foam roller, it's a small massage. Okay, we're going to get rid of some knots in the muscle. We're going to relax some of the fascia which wraps around its connective tissue, which wraps around the muscle. It's not the answer to flexibility or to increase range of motion. It gives you a very short response. So you've got about 20 minutes after foam roll in to then go and use that new range of motion, and that's where you get the adaptation, that's where you get the change in the length of the muscle. So it's just to make you feel a little bit better, give you a new range of motion before you train, and to get rid of some of the knots. So you don't need to be on it for ages. Hurdle hop. Now, for plyometrics, you use jumps, hops and bounds. Jumps are taking off on both feet, landing on both feet. Hops are taking off on one leg, landing on the same leg. Bounds are taking off on one leg, landing on the other leg. There's loads of different directions you can do this in. You can do this going forwards, going sideways, rotating, and there's loads of different ways you can start the exercise, which I'm going to show you 2 today. So I'm going to do a squat jump with a non-counter movement. So the non-counter movement is taking away the stretch shortening cycle, the reflex in the muscle and the tendons that you'll gain from doing plyometrics. So I'm going to take that out for this purpose, for this exercise. We're going to sit down to the bottom, pause, explode up and land. That's a squat jump, non-count them.
Question here, how important is training in TT position, and does this change if you're riding at different intensities? I know we've got some thoughts, but Matt, just where would you come from that?
It just depends. Again, like, say for me, like when I wanted to be Hutchinson, but I had to.
We wanted to be Bottrill.
Yeah. But for me, I had to do. I worked on like this 64 rule that I spent 60% on my time trial bike, 40% on my road bike. That's how I worked originally. And I think initially, to make those positional changes, that's the kind of rule that we run along. But then I think as soon as people adapt, you can go back more to your road bike. But I'm going to tell everybody now, like, we can come here, we can do a bike fit, we can do all these changes here, but if you don't practice the drills, you'll never sustain the position. You know, so you can go anywhere and have a bike fit, you've got to do those drills. They're to the kids.
So that wraps up my day at the Boardman Performance Centre. Hope you all enjoyed that. Sorry if the audio or visual wasn't very good, but I'm just one man with a GoPro, that's all I am. So awesome day put on by Team Bottrill. I'm going to leave all their links down below. So Matt's Instagram, his coaching setup. I've already shared my thoughts on coaching, experience with coaching with you guys in the past, but it's definitely food for thought. There seems to be a lot of good things going off at Team Bottrill, so it's definitely worth thinking about, as well as the things that Boardman Performance Centre have to offer. So perhaps I'll be back with one or both of those people at some point in the future. Watch this space. Liz, if you're watching, don't forget to click that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.